This video is going to summarise some of the structures that you find in animal cells and plant cells. So to start with, we're going to take an animal cell. At its most fundamental, or its most basic, a cell needs two things. Firstly, a cell membrane. The cell membrane is a sort of skin that goes around the outside of the cell. Its job is to control what goes into and out of the cell. So that might be taking in water or taking in sugar, or it might be releasing something else. Inside that cell membrane is a fluid called cytoplasm, and this is where the majority of the chemical reactions in the cell take place. Now within that, in an animal cell, we're going to find a number of other structures. You might have heard these referred to as organelles, but in the current AQA GCSE Biology, they're called subcellular structures, where sub means lower than or smaller than, so a subcellular structure is something that is smaller than the cell. Now the one that most people have heard of is the nucleus. So the nucleus is a little membrane-bound packet that contains the genetic information in the cell. So in an animal cell, this is going to be DNA. The nucleus is also responsible for controlling all of the actions that are going on inside the cell at any one time. Another structure that you'll find in animal cells are mitochondria. The mitochondria are where most of respiration happens. And respiration, as you hopefully know, is a chemical reaction that allows a cell to release the energy that is locked up in a molecule like glucose. You'll also find in animal cells these tiny structures called ribosomes. And it's probably worth noting that although I've drawn them on this diagram, they're actually far too small to see with many microscopes. The ribosomes are the site of protein synthesis. They are where protein is made. So that could be enzymes, it could be hormones, it could be structural proteins. Now those 5 subcellular structures are all also found in plant cells. In addition to these 5, the plant cell is then going to have 3 more structures. The first of these is a cell wall, and you need to know that in plants and in algae, the cell wall is made of a molecule called cellulose. Bacteria and yeast actually have a cell wall as well, but theirs is made of a different material. The cell wall is going to make the cell quite rigid. It's going to provide it with structure and with strength. The next thing that we're going to find in plant cells, but not animal cells, is a permanent vacuole. You can think of the vacuole as a storage place for cell sap, which is mainly water. So when the plant has access to a lot of water, it can absorb it all and store it in that vacuole. And then as the plant becomes dehydrated and starts to wilt, the vacuole is gradually going to empty. Finally, some plant cells also have these structures called chloroplasts. The chloroplasts are what make most plants look green. They're full of a green chemical called chlorophyll. And the point of chlorophyll is that it absorbs light energy. And that allows the plant to do another chemical reaction called photosynthesis, where it takes carbon dioxide and water and uses the sun's light energy to combine those together to make a sugar called glucose. That's why you'll only find that the parts of the plant above ground are green. If you look at the roots, they're not green because they don't contain chloroplasts. And the reason they don't contain chloroplasts is because they're never going to get any light energy. So to summarise those, in both animal and plant cells, we have the nucleus, the cytoplasm, the cell membrane, the mitochondria and the ribosomes, while the cellulose cell wall, the permanent vacuole and the chloroplasts are only going to be found in plant cells. Exam questions about subcellular structures tend to be fairly straightforward. There are really 3 things they can ask you. The first one would be to name the subcellular structure that has a particular function, so something like state where protein is produced in the cell. The second thing would be to describe the function of a particular subcellular structure, so describe the function of the nucleus. The third thing is going to be labelling subcellular structures, and that could be on a diagram like the one you've seen, or it could be on a photograph like this. So it's a little bit harder to see on a photograph, but the nucleus is always going to be the most obvious thing in the picture. And then the cell membrane, as we know, goes around the outside of the cell. So if you're going to label the cell membrane, you just need to draw a little arrow to the absolute edge of the cell.